Are we on air now? Yay, we're on air now.
We are.
Hi, everybody. I'm stretched out, apparently. I don't know what's wrong with my camera, and I don't feel like fixing it. We're jumping right into live show because we're running a bit late. I'm so sorry. I had an important phone call, ran a bit late. This will all be over soon. So hi, I am one of your hosts, Nicole Bellucci on Learning Space, and I have my co-host through the wall, Georgia.
Hi there, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome back, Nicole.
Yay! Yeah, for like 24 hours, and then I get on a plane again. This will all be revealed probably next week. Why my life is so crazy. Wanted to say hi to everybody leaving comments on the event page and Q&A app. Remember, if you want to participate in the discussion, you can click on, it's somewhere, the join the discussion button for the Q&A app. It'll bring up the video and app on the side where you can give us your questions and comments. As Nancy Graziano reminds everybody, if we keep Q&A pretty much to questions and comments for us as opposed to interspersed chat, which works well on the event page, that would help us out. So thank you for that. Thank you, Nancy, and hello. Hi to everyone. Hi from Germany, Guido. Sorry, Guido. You. Elad. Rock on, getting your midterm done. Relax. Even though it's a bit rattling, I get that. So, yay!
Yay, glad you could make it. 3 more to go.
Yeah. And Nancy, even though Wi-Fi is permitted mid-air, they do not have the bandwidth for streaming. I've tried. Also, it's not free. So, unfortunately, I think we're still a little ways away from being able to do a hangout on air from an airplane. Also,
but someday, that'll be fun.
Yes, Wi-Fi is permitted, but A, I'm cheap, and B, trying to stream is like makes the whole plane shake or something.
You could get your fellow passengers involved.
Oh my God, we could have like a group chat. It'd be great. So yes, we are joining you this week again for Learning Space. I know Georgia had a great time last week. Sorry I missed it.
Paper plates. It was awesome. It was really cool.
We have some new projects that we're going to put up around the STEM Center.
Yeah.
Sweet. Excellent.
Yep, that was great. And hopefully we'll have Chuck back.
Oh, good.
I mentioned this on or not, but he has this idea for a great eclipse activity. So as it gets closer to that time, or maybe before, and then as it gets really close to the wonderful 2017 eclipse, we'll have that on and get y'all ready for eclipse viewing.
Yes, the planning meetings are happening now across the U.S. on how best to take advantage of a total solar eclipse. It's going to crisscross from the northwest corner to the south. This is the northwest to southeast one, right?
Yeah, I think yes. Yes, pretty much.
Path of totality will be, but you know,
about as good as you can get for us Midwesterners.
Yeah.
So yes, start planning now.
Start planning now. So yes, okay. So the reason I was out of commission last week is I was at a conference that was right here in town for the National National Network of the Teen Science Cafe. And so we thought we'd talk a little bit about Teen Science Cafe, since that was actually the first guest we ever had on this show. I wasn't there. I don't remember.
Reminds me.
But yeah, you interviewed Sean Herberts, who
did
in the Resource Center. Do you want to maybe mention anything about that?
Yeah, that was way back, and that was I believe he was at the time getting ready for the first Teen Science Cafe that we were involved in here at the STEM Center. So it's a collaborative sort of partnership with different nodes across the country putting on these Teen Science Cafes, and Nicole will kind of tell you what that's all about. But yeah, back at that time, and that was at least it was over a year ago. They were getting ready for their very first one. It was about zombies, as I recall. And yeah, we just chatted about what he had planned, because they're very fun, interactive science experiences, and ours happened to be focused on teens. They're sort of a spin-off of the adult Science in the Pub or Science Cafe for adults. So, but these have a nice twist to it because the teens really get involved and they sort of run the show in a sense, which is great for them. So, yeah, they were just getting started, getting ready, and getting all these wonderful zombie activities about infectious diseases, I believe, was the actual science content, but they threw zombies in there. So, yeah, they were getting ready for that, and it was a lot of fun. So, I don't know, yeah, maybe, Nicole, you can just start out by giving some background on the Teen Science Cafe concept and
Sure.
what it's about and how it relates to, I guess it's, I don't know if you call it, its parent event, maybe with regular old science cafes or science in the pubs.
Yeah. So I've been to, you know, all kinds of science in the pub and sort of related tangents. There's a skeptics in the pub as well. They're all over the world, really, and it's meant to be informal, and it's usually run by a group of volunteers in a town who want science talks in a fairly informal setting. So a pub, a coffee shop, you know, something where people can hang around, get a snack, have a drink, and hear an engaging scientist, usually an engaging local scientist, talk about their research or something that they're working on or something that they're thinking about. There are some topic-specific ones, too. There's Astronomy on Tap, which debuted in New York City, and I know there's at least one. I can't. Emily will yell at me. I don't remember what the other site is because I was just hanging out with them at AAS. But they do astronomy-specific talks every month at Astronomy on Tap. And so it's a really fun, engaging way to hear about science, but also interact with the scientist. And the Teen Science Cafe kind of took this idea and brought it down an age range. So it's not, you know, it's definitely not happening in a pub, not in the U.S., but it's the same concept where it's informal and there's food and a talk about science and what's extra is there's some kind of interactivity for the teens to get involved. The different sites throughout the U.S., throughout the network, each run their own cafe a little bit differently, and I think this meeting in St. Louis was the first one where people from all the different sites came together to have, you know, a face-to-face meeting and really discuss what's been going on in the last few years. This is funded by the National Science Foundation to actually get this program running and working and going in all these different sites. I know ours was definitely NSF funded. What's unique about the St. Louis site is the one site has 3 nodes within it. So we have a bunch of different organizations that are working on our particular site's cafes. And it makes a little bit more work for the scientist speaker that we have because they typically go to 3 different sites. I was a speaker some point after the zombie one. I actually talked about CosmoQuest and moon mappers and craters and did the crater activity. They combined 2 of the sites, so I only had to give 2 talks. 2 talks plus a practice talk, so 3 talks. But typically, the scientist in St. Louis that we get every month does 4 talks. They'll do a practice talk with the teen leaders and with the adult leaders. And then they'll do one at each site, the Science Center, St. Louis Science Center, the St. Louis Academy of Science, and Cahokia High School in Illinois on our side of the river. They're actually, I think Anna Marie's a math teacher, right?
I believe she is.
Science. Incredible person with incredible students. They get super excited every month for this event. What's a key feature of the Teen Cafe is the teen leaders. The teen leaders are the ones, sometimes they're the older ones in the group, but not always the case. Depending on, some sites are high school only, some are a mix of middle school and high school, some are middle school only, it totally depends. So it's usually a student who's been around at least for a year coming to them that helps plan and prepare the speakers, and particularly by watching their test run and giving them feedback on their talk and their activity, helping to develop the activities, and then also plan things like decorations and food. They really try and go all out with the making the decorations and the food match the theme. So last year I helped put on we had a primate anthropologist from SIUE, Jennifer Regg, who is so cool. And you know, the various cafes featured, you know, like this like fake bamboo and like leaves. They went for the forest motif.
Okay.
And same thing with the food. There was lots of salads. I mean, they had other more typical human food too, but they tried to, you know, get some non-human primate food on the menu, which was pretty fun. And then one of them we actually ate crickets, although they were more the like just the crunchy exoskeleton crickets, not like actual full body of the cricket. So we really didn't have much of flavor. But we got some really great vines and video of us eating crickets. So.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Yeah. So the website for at least the St. Louis node here, Gateway Teen Science Cafe, right?
Yes, Gateway Teen Science Cafe. Yep.
So it's Teen Cafe STL. The Teen Cafe St. Louis.wordpress.com. You can kind of see a little bit more about it there. How are the teen leaders chosen? Chosen, or do they just volunteer? Is it kind of whoever would like to assume that role with the teens?
I know they're allowed to volunteer, and for many of the sites actually apply. I don't know if the situation's been where they've had more applications that they needed to wean people out, in which case I think it would be the discretion of the adults who get to know the teens. I've only been doing it for a semester. I came in kind of late, so the team leaders were already set for the year, so I have process. But they definitely they volunteer and do an application. Like I said, it's usually the kids who've already, you know, been coming for a year or so.
But they really, as you described, they really take on quite a large role in organizing and managing and making this cafe successful. So I think one of the goals of the whole program is to really increase the leadership experience and qualities of these teens. So, because they really do a lot with this program.
They do.
They have a big role. And it's very creative.
Yeah.
Very relevant to them, and they get a lot of interaction with the scientists, which even in preparation. So you tell us a little bit more about what the scientists have to do to get prepared, because they don't just come in and start talking about their particular research project.
Right. So
what goes on.
So yeah. So we usually So I've seen this both from a speaker's perspective, who was recruited by Sean,
right,
and from
the side. Yep.
Yeah. So I talked to people here, particularly Sharon Locke, our STEM Center director, about like who's a good speaker on campus. Who can I talk to? What aligns in particular with the students' interest? They do poll the students to get an idea of what they're interested in. So that gave us some topics to start from. Robots. 3D printing, you know, they were all about animals came up, and I think that's where we made the tie-in to primate anthropology. They talked about animals in general. So I reached out to a speaker, in my case, Sean, just kind of turned around in his chair, because we used to work right across from each other. It's a Nicole, you know, in a very Sean way.
Yes.
We miss you.
You would like to do this, wouldn't you?
Yeah. You want to help, right? And you know, he knew I was already pretty versed in whatchamacallit, hands-on activities. I came with a ready-made hands-on activity. They didn't have to develop one. You know, of course, we did craters with flour and cocoa powder. We made a giant mess. What was nice about it is because the team leaders are in charge of it, they do all the work of getting the stuff and putting it out and doing it. Which was really good, especially since for my first talk I was really sick.
Oh.
I was trying to keep a 5-foot radius around me so I didn't infect anybody. So they were able to run the activity with me just standing off to the side.
Answering on the infectious disease one with the zombie.
Yeah, right. Considering they had all been to that, they probably knew, like, stay away.
They're well aware, yes, of how to act around somebody.
Yeah, I'm Typhoid Mary of the zombie apocalypse. No, it's just a flu, thank goodness. So in my case, I had a ready-made activity. Sometimes we approach a speaker, they're like, this is tough. I've never done this before. It was difficult in the case of primate anthropology because, no, we don't have monkeys here at SIUE. She actually goes to South America to study them. So we couldn't, like, bring in a live monkey. But she had some ideas, and I went online and looked and got some ideas, and we brought our ideas to the teens, and they said, that's okay, but let's try this. And so the teen leaders helped us refine the activity. We ended up having some. Jennifer brought some models of skulls, so we could do anatomy, and then we had some pictures where you had to find the monkey in the picture. You know, this isn't like, you know, highly edited nature photography. This is like during her work, she'll try and catch a snapshot of these guys, and they're running and hiding, and and then we were trying to identify footprints in the mud. It was so, you know, they really enjoyed those activities, and the student workers, the team leaders really helped us find the activity. So it depends on the speaker and how well, you know, how often they do something like that.
So the challenge is sometimes to, find those kinds of hands-on activities that will really give a view into their work, give the kids a sense of what they do. And then I think probably the other challenge is sometimes just the speaking part of it, the presentation part by the scientists. So I think you guys do some work that way too, maybe just with how they interact with this kind of audience. So this is obviously a younger audience. Do you give them some training, some tips, and then I know you said there's a run-through.
Yeah, there's definitely a run-through.
Yeah.
And that's where I know Sean's deal was he knew me from work, but he would typically sit down and chat with the scientist when he was proposing to do this, just to get a set. He would basically sit them down and chat with them in a coffee shop. Ask them about their research, and based on how they explained it to him, he knew where he had to, if they were. I don't think he ran into any that, like, he was like, nope, sorry, bye. But it helps. And I know a couple of different sites have that approach where they just ask somebody they're interested in to tell them about their research, and they get a sense of, okay, how much work do we have to do? And for the most part, I think we know who the good teachers are, the good speakers, and we target those people. They do have there's a rubric, and I think this might be the one we're using later this afternoon, our other project, on how to give, how to rate someone's presentation, and so the team leaders can do that sometimes during the dry run, or they'll just say, maybe at this point in your presentation, stop and ask for questions, or ask us a question, or something like that.
Yeah, some of it's just kind of managing the environment and handling, getting cues from your audience. Are they getting restless? Is somebody got a hand up and waving way in the back, or so it becomes maybe a little more like formal teaching at that point, where you do have to be aware of what's going on. You can't. It's not just going up and giving the lecture, right, or giving the talk. So. And then with some of the content, I don't know if you had issues ever of bringing the content level down for a teen audience.
I don't think that's been an issue. I mean, there's no bringing it down really. If you're excited about it, it's less like bringing it down and more being able to explain your jargon.
Okay.
We'll catch people using jargon sometimes and ask them to explain that a little bit better. But for the most part, I think if the kind of person who says yes to something called Teen Science Cafe probably has an idea of how to give enough introductory material for a lay person. And a lay teenager versus a non-scientist adult, I think it's pretty much the same thing, if not that the teen is closer to their science education and maybe remembers it a lot better than someone who's been out of school a while.
Yeah. So what do you hope the kids are getting out of this program? I think I kind of mentioned some of the leadership qualities, at least of that core teen leadership group, but there's others involved, and then of course the teens that just attend. So what is supposed to come out of this experience for the kids?
What I like to see is that they get some one-on-one time with the scientist. if not one-on-one, or at least, 2 or 3 of them standing around in a group chatting, and getting the sense that this kind of work is something they could pursue if they wanted to. I don't, I'm not out there to make scientists out of every little kid out there. I know some people think we should be, but that's not me. And some of these Teen Science Cafe kids have no interest in science, like in school or professionally. They just think this is a really great club and enjoy themselves and enjoy listening to talks. But for those that think it could be a possibility, I want them to see that possibility and hear what the career path is like in addition to what the actual work was like. So that definitely helps.
Is part of the scientist talk up there to tell a little bit about themselves then personally and their path, sort of a little bit of how they got where they are today?
Yeah, at least in St. Louis, and this might be nationwide too, we do ask the scientists to start off talking a little bit about their career path. And so, I talked about how I went from astronomy and more towards the education research, and we had somebody most recently who does nanotech talk about some interesting choices she had to make when presented with this postdoc versus that postdoc versus this possible teaching professor opportunity. She had to work it out, the politics of that. And so that was, for me, really interesting, and I think it was good for the students to know that it's not so cut and dry. So yeah, there's definitely we definitely ask the scientists to include that right off the bat in the beginning of their presentation.
So are you hoping that the kids also learn some content, or is that really kind of secondary, or even not the main goal at all? I mean, I'm sure they probably learn a little, if not, and some more, but...
The evaluations I've seen, so there have been some post-surveys and evaluations. I don't see a lot, if any, content questions on it. What we're gauging more is interest in the topics. And I would love if they came away with some cool fact or interesting thing that they remember, but as a program, I don't think that's a primary goal. I think measuring the interest as well as confidence in understanding science is more important than actually coming away with the content itself. Now, for something like zombies, you may, this is why the CDC's been on this zombie kick for a while, is you may really want to get across, here are the things you should do in an emergency. Like, that was the whole point of the CDC's particular campaign in that. I think it was the CDC, yeah. So you really want them to get some personal safety tips out of that for how to deal with emergency response, or how to deal with, particularly virulent diseases. Of course, now we've had Ebola take national stage, or international stage. I think it would be good to have I don't know if some of the nodes are working on this, but talk about Ebola, because it is a current issue.
Yeah, and current issues, of course, relevant to the kids and something they can connect to, and maybe they hear people talking about, and you probably try to make the science not only interesting and understandable, but somehow relate to them in their everyday life.
Right.
Is that a piece of it also?
Yeah, I think so. Again, it's hard when you're doing non-primate anthropology, maybe. But like the 3D printing, for example. We had a speaker talk about 3D printing, and that had a lot of application. I think the kids all went gaga over the Mobius strip 3D printed bacon. They all decided they needed that in their life.
I didn't.
But it was good to talk about the actual applications of 3D printing. And yeah, there's some gee-whiz stuff, and we all got bracelets, like 3D printed bracelets from the Code with Google project. But and to talk about even bigger. He had some examples of there's some projects where people are designing not really prosthetic, it's not the right word for it, but hands for children who are disabled in their hand in some way. Because 3D printing seems to be way better than traditional methods of making that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So what are some of the interesting topics that students have suggested? Because you do have the students sort of give potential topics, right? And I suppose you can't use them all.
Right.
But you probably used as many as you can. Are there any that were really interesting to you or different or wild?
Yeah, I'm trying
whether or not they actually became a cafe.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if there were any topics that I only remember the ones that stick in my head are the ones we specifically pursued because we did. So yeah, I can remember if like infectious disease. I don't know if that was one that came from the students because that was so early on. And I do want to mention that we brought some of the team leaders to the conference to speak with the adult leaders. Some of whom haven't even done cafes before. Like they've started a group, but they haven't had their first cafe yet. And so the girls that I drove out there, the young ladies, they're in high school. I was driving them back to their school, and I said, "So how was it? How was your dinner?" Because they spread the kids out, like one per table with 2 or 3 adults, and they were like. It was great, but I barely got time to eat because they asked so many questions. Like, they wanted to know so much from our perspective, which is great. I mean, they were like celebrities for the night. But anyway, one of the things that they said was across the board for the St. Louis kids, the zombie one is still their favorite.
Zombie is the best. Wow.
That was still the favorite of all the topics they've done. So if you haven't done an infectious disease zombie cafe in your node, do it.
Yeah. That was there.
Yeah, that was a hit. The activity was a hit. The speaker was a hit. So it may have just been the great combination of speaker and topic.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's hard to replicate, but I feel like you could do well with that in a lot of places.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
I wanted to briefly mention. I'm noticing a comment. Thank you, Nancy, for pointing out that there are 5 astronomy on tap sites. So New York City, Columbus, Ohio, New Haven, Connecticut, Santiago, Chile, and Austin, Texas. Those are the 5 cities that have astronomy on tap. Go find one near you if you are in one of those cities. So I just wanted to interject that.
Yeah, excellent. So tell us a little more about the conference then that you just were at. So you said some teams went along, right? Who else? Who was there?
Yeah, so the coordinators of the national program were there. A bunch of people who, like our site, are active and have been active for a few years, and then some people that are just getting started with their cafes and haven't actually had one run yet. And what was interesting was we talked about the difference in location and how that makes a difference. So we actually had a rural versus city discussion. I wasn't in on that one because I think I was in another one. But one thing that we talked about in one of my sessions, of course, was how to do meetings virtually. There's one group in Montana in particular where the students are very spread out in distance. Once a year or once a semester they all meet at a university to kind of kick off the program, but then all of their cafes are done virtually using Google Hangouts.
You use Hangouts, wow.
Yeah, so they have a speaker on Hangouts, and the kids, the ones that can get, there's like, they'll collect at each other's houses, like the ones that are closest to each other, and that way there'll be one person running like the mini event and running the. I think instead of a hands-on activity in real time, they do longer-term projects like building back, like growing bacteria.
Yeah, how do you get the activity part sort of? I think you could probably do it, but
my suggestion was to do it the way we did the teacher professional development.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could do it. Yeah.
Send them a list ahead of time, like here are the things you need, and have them, and if there's 3 sites each with 3 kids or 4 sites each with 3 kids or something, then you can have 1 adult at each of those that's kind of running it, or 1 team leader that's got all the materials together to run it. But I think in that case they did some long-term things like growing bacterial cultures, and so instead of actually doing the activity, they would just like hold up their petri dishes and show the results and whatnot for the scientists to be able to discuss their results. So that
case, yeah, I was going to say, so Hangout would then too, but if they do that, and then so it would be watchable or accessible. Is it a Hangout on air?
They're not on air.
They're not on air. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And that's something that came up, of course, is if you're dealing with people under 18, you do have to worry about parental consent.
Yeah, yeah.
We're using their image and stuff, and so we do parental consent forms just to do photos and video. Teen Science Cafes may not be appropriate for Hangouts on Air because you'd have to get all that permission, and then it's on YouTube forever, and it's kind of nice to have a safe space where teens can ask questions of the scientist and know that, this isn't going to be recorded for posterity. So I think the closed Hangout is probably a better option for that, as long as you can clump into enough clusters that you don't max out the 10-person limit of your Hangout.
Yeah.
And we talked about different technologies as well. Some people prefer GoToMeeting or things like that. If you for stuff that has a license, if you could afford the license, then that's great. But in Montana, they had a lot of success with Google Hangouts, even with places with weak internet signals. Students were still able to participate. So we had the big city versus rural node questions. We talked about doing possible regional meetups of the teams, so like the Midwest ones, some East Coast ones, get them to meet each other on a more, even if it's a yearly basis.
Yeah.
And things like how to secure and continue funding, and then what types of research questions we could get out of the program in terms of, like you said, leadership abilities, how confident students are at the end of it, whether they've improved communication skills, all kinds of things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to know a little bit about how it impacts how students see scientists, of course, because here's a chance to interact with a real scientist, not one on TV or in a movie or even in a book, so here's real-world scientist experience. And then interesting, too, to hear the scientist's story and see, if that impacts the students, helping them think that, it's not simple, but yet it can still be done, and everybody has different paths on, how they get to their scientific career if that's where they end up going. And so it doesn't have to be one straight shot, it could have detours, there could be some failures along the way, and then that just makes you go in a different direction, and then finally you get there, and a lot of it is persistence, and I bet they hear some interesting stories, and maybe that makes them a little more, maybe it's confidence again, or somehow identifying with a scientist. That could be me up there, in 10 years or something. So I would love to hear and, find out if any of that's going on. I don't know, I forget what they're actually studying now. I don't know if any of those are questions that they're looking at, but I imagine some groups are, because you would imagine that would be impact you might see.
Yeah. I wanted to get to some comments in the Q&A app. Guido says, I like the approach of not trying to make scientists out of every student, but such a project might still produce a lifelong interest in science and a better scientific understanding in general. So yeah, that's the thing we're aiming for, and that would be the thing to study. Of course, everybody wants to do long-term longitudinal studies, and those are hard. We want to know how far into life these but that's
could just track people and put a chip in them and collect their data. Yeah, see where they're going, what they're doing.
Science meter on them. Michael Jobin says, "Hey kids, if there's something you don't understand, don't panic. Search and research." Yeah, I hope that's another message they get out of it is like, ask questions, look things up, and
talk, have a conversation. Yeah.
Guido asks, I wonder what the female-male ratio is of these events. Does it depend on the topic, or is it relatively evenly balanced? I haven't noticed. I don't have specific numbers on it, but at least in the St. Louis ones I've been to, it seems pretty split 50-50 between guys and girls. It pretty much maps to the population they're drawing from, whether it's a particular school or a particular program. I definitely see girls getting just as interested and being involved in teen leadership positions as boys.
Yeah, and I know they are tracking that information. I don't know what it is, but they're interested in that. Yeah.
And we have a pretty good diversity of speakers in terms of gender as well. What we don't have in terms of diversity is, at least again for the St. Louis node, I can only speak to that one. We don't have a good racial diversity across our speaker and we're trying to change that because we're like, dudes, you can do better. But the male-female ratio is hold on a second. I have someone at the door. I'm on air. Thanks. I forgot to put up my sign. Yeah. So, but the male-female ratio seems pretty even across students and then across speakers as well.
Yeah.
And so, do you feel a guy? I don't know who that is.
Well, it's just garbage time, I think.
It's garbage time, guys. Sorry. Anyway.
So what kind of feedback do you get from the students, like while they're there? I mean, so we're getting some information from them. They have little post surveys, little exit cards that they fill out, and you're getting some reaction there. But I don't know. Do you see any like pattern or anything interesting from the kinds of questions they ask or how they're behaving, during the cafe? Anything interesting to share?
I don't have the data on the written responses, but I can talk a little bit about what I see verbally.
Definitely.
What they're doing is they ask a ton of questions, and sometimes this is something the team leaders brought up, is that sometimes we have to remind people that we need to let the scientists go home and we need to get home. Our parents are waiting outside, and your parents are waiting outside. So
that's fantastic, though. That's something to hear.
Yeah, sometimes it could go longer just with how many questions they have. Really continue the conversation for quite a while, and so I feel like okay, the organizers feel like, okay, we're gonna shuffle you out, guys. But so there's a lot of interest in that, a lot of good feedback in terms of they are asking lots of questions and really asking interesting questions too. And what I love to see is that the team leaders who went to the dry run asked a bunch of questions at the dry run, and then at the talk itself, they have even more new questions to ask. Like they thought about it for a couple weeks, and they said,
yeah, that's amazing. And they're not even trying to get out of a test or anything. Like my students were, they always ask questions. There were certain times where it's like, okay, guys, I know you're asking questions because
totally done that.
I know we have to take a test in 5 minutes. Sorry.
I've totally done that as a student. So please don't try that with me.
I'm on to you. Yes.
Because I know what you're doing.
I know. It's hilarious.
But yeah, it's at 5:30, so it's after school. So.
Yeah, I know. So that's awesome. They really are engaged and interested.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Well, it's exciting. You don't often come across a scientist. I mean, you probably do, but you don't realize that you do. Every day.
Right. Unless you're, unless you're like one of us or I feel like my social circle is so skewed because it has astronomers in it. And my boyfriend feels that way too because by proxy his social circle has a lot of astronomers in it. But other than that, most people don't realize that they probably are a neighbor with a scientist or talk to them about their work like that.
Yeah.
And especially with teens too, because they're not necessarily talking to all the adults in their neighborhood about what they do.
I know. By the way, yeah. So you led a session on social media also. Is that so? What kinds of things are they thinking about with teen science cafes and social media?
Yeah. So the question that keeps going round and round is, what social media are teens on, and should we be trying to target it? And I think after so we had some discussions on the forum for weeks before the conference.
Oh, okay.
And so we kind of there's a couple of us there who have a bunch of social media experience. So it was Lawrence Norris, who tweets as Black Physicist. Awesome Twitter account. You should totally check him out. He was there. We were back and forth on a lot of it. And I think we kind of came around to the idea that we don't know, those of us who are in our 30s or whatever, don't know what the teens or the kids, I feel like I shouldn't be, I'm not old enough to say this, but don't know what the kids are using these days. Like,
not that old.
I just figured out Vine, guys. Snapchat, I still don't understand. I tried it, and I can't get into the culture of it. But leave it to the teens. That's why we have teen leaders, is so that they can run it their way. And actually, when asked, a lot of the teen leaders on our panel said we still use email and flyers to get the word out. Like, that's still the most effective thing.
Wow.
Most of them have Facebook accounts, but don't really use it to be social because that's where their parents are. Facebook is an older. I asked for a show of hands in my first meeting with the teen leaders last semester who uses Twitter, and 2 hands went up out of the whole room.
Oh, okay.
And so yeah, again, Twitter, they're kind of like, that's not our thing. Instagram is huge, but they may not necessarily use it for school functions or community functions. It may just be for pictures of other stuff. It's a good way to share pictures after an event.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily used for. So yeah, they all said we use email and flyers to share events. So we let the teens worry about using social media for promotion.
Okay.
And what we ended up talking about is how do we use social media to promote the national program, the local program, the local programs. So how do you get people in your community interested? How do you use it to raise the profile of the national network? And how do we use it within the national network to keep our conversations going? So that's what we focused on instead. You know, because a lot of some teens end up at a cafe because their parent saw it on Facebook or on Twitter. And
Yeah,
so, hey, there's this thing. You want to go? This looks cool. So reaching out to, using social media to reach out to parents, to reach out to community leaders, local. I pointed out that, you know, our local NPR station's pretty active on Twitter. If we send them stuff, you know, that gets a chance of being seen.
So it sounds like Twitter is still big, at least for the adults.
Twitter's still big deal for us. It's not a big deal.
Well, okay, you're an adult, Nicole.
I am.
You're a young adult, but you're an adult. Yeah, so Twitter's still good.
Yeah. But, and then we can use it to really, you know, like I said, raise the profile of the national network and pull in collaborators, spread the word to other educators who, which I hope this Hangout does too, spread the word to other educators who may be interested in starting a teen cafe in their town or in their school, because it's a
you start small, right? Start small.
Yeah, start small and get a few interested kids and work from there. So that's where we ended up putting the social media discussion. We said, stop trying to figure out what platform is best for kids, and let's worry about what message we want to send, and then how to distribute that message, who our audience is, and how to distribute it appropriately. So we came up with some strategies, and unfortunately, I could have talked about it for another hour, but they kept shooing me out because I literally had to be on a plane. And I was like running late, and they're like literally kicking me out the door. They're like, Nicole, you said you had to leave at 8:45. It's now 9 o'clock. You need to leave to make your flight, which was I am very grateful, and everyone was wonderful and helpful. But I wanted to keep talking.
You're just too busy.
Yeah. So we're just gonna continue the conversation as usual.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Great. So what's coming up next for you then? Or do you have one coming up soon? Or?
We're still working on some for this semester. We actually had one of last semester's rescheduled for January of this year. In a couple weeks, they'll be doing a health-related one. We're getting all 3 nodes together at one site to do a health-related cafe. The dry run is next Monday night, so I get to see what it's like then. I think I can announce this. I've asked and gotten a yes from Danielle Lee, who is an amazing scientist and science communicator. She is originally from the St. Louis area, doesn't live here now, but she will be back in the spring visiting family, and she's agreed to do a cafe with us. So I'm super excited for that because she studies behavior in rats. And again, you know, we won't have rats at the cafe, at least not intentionally. And sure, she doesn't travel with them when she visits her family. But I know she's a super engaging speaker. And she actually, I think, was in the Academy of Science, and she was a teen here. So she's an alum of the program,
fabulous.
Of that program. So. Yeah, so we're going to have kind of a local girl come home and talk about all the awesome science that she does. we're working to schedule that still, and then I don't remember what the third topic is going to be because my brain hurts. We've got a couple of things we're throwing up in the air, so.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, I know. I mean, this will be my last semester doing it here, and as far as I know, the NSF funding here is technically should have ended last semester, but we had some money left over that's running the semester's programs. So I don't know where they are in terms of sustainability and keeping the program going. And I think we're going to try and rope in some of our engineering students at SIUE to go talk to the teams as part of a different program that we're meeting for in an hour.
Excellent too. Yes, it is a great. I mean, it's all about communicating science in a way, at least maybe from the adult perspective. You know, getting your message out there, engaging your audience, letting them get a glimpse into not only what you do but who you are as a scientist. So it's a great way, you know, for all research scientists to get their, you know, get their research, get their stuff out there, and let people see what you do and how exciting it is.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So I want to get to some last comments before I actually have another phone call in 4 minutes. So, but
Nicole's booked these days. Go ahead.
So Elad, it's no joke. I still think I'm a teenager, but I'm actually 30. Me too, Elad.
Oh, all right, you youngsters.
30, but I am. I have no idea what my teenage nieces are using social media for. I feel old and used to be a social media manager until a year ago. I understand that being social media manager for stuff is awesome when doing outreach to adults, but yeah, I figured out finally that my teenage cousins are on Instagram, and that's where I can find them now, because they don't use Facebook.
Yeah. See, I have no idea what my nephews do. They're teenage and preteen, and
I feel kind of bad because like I'm following them, and I mean I'm a cousin, but I'm an older cousin, but like their parents are following them on Instagram because they want to see their college stuff, and I'm like, oh honey, you have no place to go to post them for your parents to see, which is probably for the best.
That's some space. Yeah.
But yeah, I hear you, Elad. I'm a kid, 30-year-old kid. And Nancy Graziano says, I would rather see kids be seriously interested in science as an avocation, I hope I said that right, since it will, in my opinion, be a lifelong love they will never tire of. Yes. All too often, we burn out after working in our careers for so long and want nothing to do with it eventually. That can definitely be true. So yeah, having a love of science doesn't mean you have to put on the lab coat and do the thing. So
yeah, there's many ways to engage with science.
Yes.
That's the cool thing.
Yes. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Check out the links. I'm gonna add them. I put them in the showcase. I'm gonna add them as a comment if the website is working. So it's Teen
Awesome program.
ScienceCafe.org is for the national network.
Okay.
TeenCafeSTL.org, I think, is our local site, but it redirects to a WordPress.com URL.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say because I had the WordPress.com, but okay.
Yeah, no, that's the one for our local one. Because when I took over from Sean, I said it's going on WordPress. Gosh darn it! So I moved to WordPress.
Yeah.
Well, I was able to give admin privileges to everybody, all the other nodes, and I think one of the other adult leaders has some plans for redesign. So I'm excited to see that.
Okay.
So yeah, all right. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. Awesome program. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Next week will be another show by Pamela Gay. So the 4 forces and the standard model of physics. So you guys will be getting to the basics of everything and how everything starts. Week after, so that's next week, the 11th. Week after that is the 18th. We will have Emily Rice on. She has some interesting astronomy lab things to share. And of course, I'm going to ask her about Startorialist and Astronomy on Tap, just because I can. We'll try and fit that in. And then at the end of this, rounding out February, we will have, I'm super excited about this, we'll have James Dunbar, the author and illustrator of Universe Verse, a comic book series about science, like the universe and evolution and all this cool stuff. So I own at least volume 1, if not a couple more volumes. So yeah, we're going to have him on. I'm so excited. So that's the lineup coming up. Friday is the Weekly Space Hangout, and Monday is Astronomy Cast.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, that's the. I think I just saw the event pop up. So thank you everybody for watching. Go check out, if you haven't already, I know most of you guys are probably already there, but the Weekly Space Hangout crew community on Google Plus is a great place to talk about the hangouts that we do. Guido has a sticky post up there that lists every astronomy hangout on all of Google. It's fantastic. So you can never run out of great content. Yeah, that's all it is. Now I really need to hang up.
Awesome. Good to see everybody again.
Good to see you guys. I missed you guys.
See you next week.
See you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, that's right.
It actually works out nicely because George and I are going to be in San Jose for a conference next Wednesday. So
we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Yay.
Alrighty.
Bye.
All right, goodbye.